And this is my very first vlog. It's actually on the Alice franchise from Quinrose that I've been collecting recently. Now, there are actually 6 games that are included in the storyline for Wonderland, their version of it. And then there's also a 7th game. That 7th game was the second fan disc made for the series, and that's the only one that I currently do not have. Mainly because I'm not sure if I really want to stream it or not, because it has no tie-in to the official story. What I first started streaming, though, was Clover no Kuni no Alice, which is the official second game. And it came in perfect condition when I bought it as a Japanese import. They actually included the manual, the box art, and the art is absolutely gorgeous on the disc. You can see that there are pictures on there that matched the box art that was given. And as you can see, it did come in pretty much perfect condition for a used collectible item. They're actually not that expensive, so if you did want to enjoy the games as they are originally meant to be played, I would recommend using Amazon because they have that A to Z guarantee. If anything goes wrong on international shipments, I contacted them on one and I got my refund. I don't know if the same thing would happen for you, depending on the situation. They may have different policies, but at least you have some protection. And most of the Japanese sellers are actually extremely nice. Extremely nice. I was just so shocked that everything came in such perfect condition. Like, there's not even creases on the manuals. I was so happy. And you can see it's gorgeous. So the way that this worked was they released Alice in the Country of Hearts, which was Heart no Kuni no Alice. And then they redid it for PSP, because it was originally, I believe, released for the computer. And then out came the fan disc. So the fan disc, that is actually a parallel world to the very, very first game, Heart no Kuni no Alice. And it takes place right after she chooses to stay, not on any route really, depending on which one it was that you started. And from there, she wakes up and there's a storm coming. The storm is brought by the mad eggs, and it turns everybody kind of crazy when it hits. It goes by territory, so it's not all affected at once. And basically, with this one, they all don't remember what happens afterwards, and it leads directly to the official second game. Now, in the tie-in for some of the manga that was released, it does talk about one of the managers of Wonderland for this clockwork world that basically kidnapped Alice and brought her there. This guy right here, the Dream Incubus, he actually, in that manga tie-in, talks about using the storm, or implies that he is using this crazy storm's energy to shift Wonderland for the move that occurs in the official second game. She wakes up in that second game, in the prologue that I already did for the Mad Hatter Mafia family. She wakes up the day after the storm hit for their territory, and she talks about feeling weird, like something feels off, and she feels like there was a storm last night, but she doesn't really remember anything about that. She just remembers going to sleep and waking up and then being told that they had moved. So that's a little bit of a conspiracy theory, I guess you would call it, for the game and the lore. But basically, he's got quite a bit of power, more than most of even the managers in Wonderland. So there are certain things that he does in different games that make you wonder. And basically, some people disappear after this move. And the second game starts out with a couple characters missing and then replaced. And she freaks out throughout the whole game about it. Which then leads to the official third game, which I am also streaming on the channel, and that is Joker no Kuni no Alice. Alice in the Country of Joker. So she's still within basically the same country as Clover, which was the second game after the fan disc. But the Joker has now arrived and brought back with him in this changing seasons that he brings the people that had disappeared from the first and the fan disc game to the second. So Vivaldi is in all of the games through to this one. She disappears after this one and is no longer there, the Queen of Hearts. She gets replaced, actually, which is sad. So I did want to get through the Joker no Kuni no Alice and the Clover no Kuni no Alice first, before touching on any of the other games. And this one wraps up at the end with, again, her not choosing any route to stay on, but to just stay for her friends. She ends up having another move right after this game. And there was actually 2 games released for that country, and that was Dia no Kuni no Alice, Alice in the Country of Diamonds. The first of which was this one, and it brought back a ton of the people that had disappeared from that second game, but they're past versions of themselves. So it literally took her to a past parallel reality, and none of the characters remember her. So she stayed in the end for absolutely no reason, because she ended up somewhere where they don't even remember her friends, just so she could learn about their past and their backstory and hopefully fall in love with their past self. Because she's very anti-love, this whole series is based on the premise that she never falls in love throughout the games, and she just builds friendships with these people that make her wonder if she should stay in this dream world or if she should go home. And their goal is to actually keep her there, trap her there. You find out in this game quite a bit of the lore is actually unlocked for you. And supposedly the new games in the series coming 2020, Spade no Kuni no Alice, Alice in the Country of Spade. From the promotional stuff I was able to actually translate, it's almost a reboot because she loses her memories from some of the stuff that I read, and restarts in a version of what seems to be Clover no Kuni no Alice, but with new characters again added, which changes the country name slightly and the management. The way the worlds work is there's roll holders, which represent the hour hands on a clock, and each roll holder, there's 12 of them in each country, unless you're in the Joker game, because that brings back everybody. So there's no longer a limit of 12. She gets back everybody. So all the people that missed the move the first time are brought back through the seasons, and then she plays the Joker to be able to travel through the seasons to different territories basically connecting dimensions of Wonderland together when it's not supposed to be, and that's why it's called the Season of Lies. After the Joker game, she's wiped a little bit for her memories on him, and he reappears in the Dia games throughout, trying to get her to go to different realities or to trap her in the prison. That's a bit more in-depth than what we'll get in this video, but I basically wanted to explain how the games actually tie in together. So you have Heart no Kuni no Alice, then you have the parallel world, Twin Worlds, no Kuni no Alice, and then from there, after the storm, you have the Clover no Kuni no Alice game, which is her very first move, and takes away some of the characters. And then you have Joker no Kuni no Alice, which brings back everybody for the side story third game, and that actually leads into Dia, where he appears randomly on this train, which is the connector between worlds. Now in Clover, there are doors that do this, and the role holders are barred from being able to use them, but everybody knows about it. And so the premise of the Clover game is to keep Alice from going through these doors to get back to reality, our world. In the Dia games, she is kept away from the trains by the role holders because they do the same exact thing, and she could end up being lost to them forever. She could go back to our world, or she could end up in a different parallel world, and they have no way to reach her. The only one that can reach across those dimensions in Wonderland and also open the door to Wonderland from our reality is the Dream Incubus, and that would be Nightmare. The same one who moves her to Clover for her very first move. And throughout the games, him and the White Rabbit are actually the ones that take her specifically to different dimensions of Wonderland. This is using tie-ins from manga booklets as well, though, so it's not completely all the lore that's just in the game. And in the Dia games, one starts out with Nightmare, the Dream Incubus, dropping her into another Wonderland. And then the other one starts with the White Rabbit, who originally kidnapped her and brought her to Wonderland, taking her and dropping her into a different reality. And the way they split the games, it actually wasn't explained pretty much anywhere else that I could find, except for the translated official visual fan book for the first game of Alice in the Country of Diamonds. And what it is she's actually two parallel versions of Alice. One stayed, I believe, with the Heart Country's territory for the castle, and then the other one stayed with, I believe, the Hatter. Or no, the Tower, sorry. And that may change based on where you're starting up for your routes, because you do get to choose the territory when you first start, and that changes your prologue when the game begins. So the way that it works is, in the last two games, they took her back to a past version of Wonderland. And she's going around trying to learn the backstories of all of her friends to understand more of who they are, and they are trying to trap her in their country of diamonds, because they all have different versions of themselves in each of these dimensions. Their goal is to keep her there in their dimension of Wonderland. So not just in Wonderland in general, but in their dimension. And this plays in because they all try to trap her, or they kick her out of the dimensions to help her learn and grow and to get attached more. It's a lot of information, I know. But basically, at the end of the Diamond games, some of the ends combine the two Alices because there's only one of her. And so when she split for these different dimensions, in the end, when you finish the game, some of those ends actually combine her together, and she'll end up remembering stuff from both games. It's so confusing and so crazy, but I love it. It's amazing. And that wasn't really explained anywhere but in that official visual fan book, which also explained some of the things that they had answered for the routes that weren't really covered in the other games. Plot holes, I guess you would call them. The games are gorgeous. These are their past selves. This is the past Knight of Hearts Ace. This is him grown up. This is Julius, the clock maker, or the clock fixer. He basically is like their undertaker because they're run by clocks for their hearts, and she's the only one that has a heart. She's the only one that can't be replaced. So he fixes any clocks that are broken, which means people that have died, they leave behind their clock and then they go to the clockmaker to get fixed. And you find out later that he's similar to the Joker, who is one of the managers of Wonderland. And the dodo bird, actually, too, is kind of similar. So he's in the process of getting deleted, and he'll actually turn into basically just his role. You find out if that ends up happening. And she's given a couple choices on different routes. I won't spoil that, but the basis is that she could become a part of Wonderland if she becomes attached enough or makes the choices to do so. And that's one of their goals for certain ones. Each of them have a different thing that they want from Alice to bring meaning to them and, like, their life. Because they're clockwork people, they can't run without the game, and the game is to trap the outsiders there or to continue maintaining the current game without the outsider, which would be fighting amongst each other and maintaining just basically, like, goals and jobs and positions assigned to people who, if they become a role holder, gain faces, and if they are not able to hold a main position, they actually represent the seconds on a clock. So, like, the second hands on a clock, and they're faceless. Alice is the only one that can identify them between each other because she sees their individuality and who they are and doesn't think that they're all just replaceable like they themselves maintain in their mind. These are pictures of the different locations and territories. In the Diamond games, it changes a little bit. The station took the place of the Clover Tower and the Clock Tower from the first and second game. Julius stayed at the Clock Tower, and it was the neutral territory that didn't fight. The other ones all fought for territory as part of the current Wonderland game without the outsider. That's just what they do to maintain, like, a life and a goal to continue living. They're immortal, and they're basically both children and adults at the same time, so they can speed their clocks forward to grow older, or they can actually turn it back to grow younger. Here's Boris. He's the Cheshire Cat. More artwork. They actually give you the stat guide, so when I'm streaming, I'll actually be able to get the ends. I was just going to do blind playthroughs for the first attempts, though. Just for fun. I like bad endings, and these ones have really interesting ones. The feels. The feels. Oh my goodness. The white rabbit actually gets replaced in the Diamond games by the black rabbit. Sydney Black. Where before it was Peter White for the white rabbit. He is actually the dodo bird, which, along with the Joker and Julius the Clockmaker, represent some of the managers of Wonderland who are basically being deleted and turned into almost ghost forms. That is one thing that can happen. There's the Joker, Julius's past self, Julius Monterey. Ace's self, the Knight of Hearts, Ace's past self. Nightmares, adult form, which can actually reach across dimensions from the Clover country. Because he has that power, he's actually the only one of himself that can do that. So his younger version from the station in the Diamond game cannot do that. But he does troll on him throughout the games, along with the older version of him, which is like a more adolescent version in the second Diamond game. Because they're still both younger versions of him, but they're less powerful, and they run the station for the connecting dimensions. So they would take a train or take you on a train to get you to another part or dimension. And they do talk about throughout the Diamonds games of getting Alice back to Heart Country or Clover Country, depending on which version she was. The one that never moved from Heart Country and this was her first move, or the one that came from the Clover Country from Heart Territory. So after this, Quinrose went bankrupt, and they actually pulled all of the digital downloads, so the only way that you can buy these games fully legally would be to purchase them internationally or through collectors. They're actually not that expensive right now. I would suggest if you're interested getting them right now, because in 2020, Spade No Kuni No Alice is coming, and I'm sure quite a few people are going to be looking for the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth games. The 7th game, that's the second fan disc in the series, and it has absolutely no tie-in to any of this. It's just a magic school with extra stories and routes, and they gave the Joker a full route in that game. So you could just enjoy some more fan service with your specified character that you enjoy the most. Different faces of Alice. Now, we went through all of the games. However, I didn't explain the new editions that they released. The only one that they ever localized for America was the Shinso Ban New Edition version of Heart no Kuni no Alice. And that was actually adapted for a mobile app and was never actually brought to the US for the PSP version. However, I did buy the Shinso Ban version, which was the only one they localized, but it's the PSP version. And they did the same with Clover, but I do not have the Clover Shinso Ban version. I could not find it. It was nowhere to be found. Anyway, this replaced the old art style and was the one that they used for the continuing games after Joker. And they replaced the first and second game with this edition of artwork. So there is Nightmare, the Dream Incubus, Julius, Monray, the Clockmaker, Boris Airway, the Cheshire Cat, Mary Gowland, he runs the amusement park in the first game, and in the Twin World game, the fan disc. And he also is brought back in the Joker game. So they bring back the amusement park, even though he's a role holder that was supposed to be negated. Because actually, Joker replaced him. The doors are actually found in the forest, which took the place of the amusement park from the first and fan disc games. So in Clover, the official second game, he is gone. He is one of the ones that is missing. And so is he, Julius Monray. He was replaced by Nightmare, who didn't have a physical body in the first and Twin World games because it wasn't his dimension. And so they both run the towers, which are the neutral territories in their countries. This is Elliot March. He is the second in the Mafia, the March Hare. This and this would be the Bloody Twins. They like to interchange with each other. And they even talk about that in the first game with Alice, when she can't choose between them if you're on her route. These are main characters that are in all of the games. So these three. And then him, also the Cheshire Cat, the Ace of Hearts, and Nightmare Goshak, the Dream Incubus. Those are all in all of the games. Now, Vivaldi, she disappears after the fourth game, or the third official game, which is Joker. And he disappears also after Joker, because he's replaced by Sidney Black in the Diamond games. And that was the White Rabbit, the Shiru Usagi, Peter White. And here is one of the main true routes, Blood. He is in absolutely every single one of the games, Blood Dupree, and he is the Mad Hatter, the Mafia boss. You find out there's a lot of really weird stuff that happens with his backstory, and some other things which I haven't quite confirmed, between him and Vivaldi. So when that happens in the games, we'll have some fun. Because I'm not even sure exactly what all is accurate and what's not. And she did choose, through my choices, in the second game, the Clover no Kuni no Alice, to stay at their location. So she wakes up in the Hatter Mansion, in that one, right after the move from the Twin World game, which no one remembers, because that storm wipes their memory after it changes them for, like, the period or duration of the storm. So this is Shinsoban, Heart no Kuni no Alice for PSP. And was their new version of that first game. And I already showed you the second game. The insides of it. So I'll go ahead and show you the third game's insides. As you can see, all of the discs are printed beautifully. When I opened it up, I was just so pleased. And the fact that they still had the manuals, like, more than 6 years later. And they even gave me, with my books, the official bookmarks that came with them for my light novels, which I'll get into in a little bit. They're the tie-ins and the fillers for the missing holes of the game. But this is Joker manual. And you can see that all of the characters came back, so more than 12 roll holders at a time now. Nightmare. He gets into a fight with him while saving Alice because of his domain. He runs the circus, which is like the entertainment and the show. And then he also runs the prison for the rule breakers. He's actually the Mad Hatter territory's questioner. He also buries the dead, which then hides their clock and makes Ace, the Knight of Hearts, really mad because he has to go then dig it up for Julius to fix. Because, again, they're all replaceable. Once he fixes them, they have a new body and, like, a wiped mind. And they're back alive as a faceless person, as a second hand on the clock, helping run the game that maintains their world. And then Mary Gowland, he's actually the one that replaced the Duchess in the original Alice in Wonderland book. So he's based on the Duchess, surprisingly. So it's just a little bit of a backstory there. And then, of course, Boris, he's the Cheshire Cat. He actually has the power to open the doors himself, and he cuts and copies and pastes, like, space around Wonderland. So he actually, in one of the tie-ins, travels to find out why Alice stayed, and some other stuff, too. So he, like, goes to visit another version of Alice in a different dimension, which the role holders really aren't supposed to do, but because of his power, he kind of has a little more leeway. Anyway, here's the old art style, so you can really tell between the fan book and the Alice in this game what the old style looked like. I actually still find it beautiful. There's some people that complain, but I think it's like more retro anime style, and I actually enjoy all anime. Like, I grew up on this type of style, so it's normal for me. They're so beautiful. Oh my gosh. Gorgeous! Again, this game's more of like a side story, so it's not quite as long, I believe, as the other games for Joker no Kuni no Alice. The Twin Worlds was its own game, but it was like a fan disc, so not an official part of the series, but it does explain quite a bit. If you were to look up translations, Boka Otame, I believe, has a blog that you can go to, and she's got a resource page there for Alice resource links. And that was actually where I first started looking up information to be able to find everything that I needed for this series. And then also Marchin Translations blog has the original first game as a free download because, again, they pulled all of the digital versions when they went bankrupt. And they basically, as far as I'm aware, they lost all of the licensing because they're not able to bring it back. I'm not sure what's going to happen with the Quinrose Reborn brand, but they did rebrand it. So it's not Quinrose anymore, it's Quinrose Reborn, and that's the name that the Spade no Kuni no Alice game is coming out under. Just some fun information, and then also if you guys are interested and want to play some of this stuff, you can find it. It's been fan translated by Marchin Translations for the very first game for PC. If you guys can get the patch up and running, I do recommend it. It's a beautiful game, and I'll actually be streaming it on the channel as soon as I get done with at least 1 to 2 routes, each for both Clover and Joker. Because there's already someone covering the first game, she just doesn't do the PC version that much. I decided to start with the official second and the official third game in the series. And then once I get up some routes for that, I'll backtrack and I'll stream at the same time, embedding probably the first game from my PC, my gaming laptop, and then the Twin World game. I will then screen mirror for the channel, so that way you guys can get an idea of the parallel world that took place and like did the first move for Alice. Because it's really interesting. We'll take a look at the very first Alice in the Country of Diamonds game. Disc and manual. They are so, so gorgeous. I really just can't get over how gorgeous this stuff is. Like, why couldn't they localize all of them for us? And that mobile app game kind of destroyed some of the storyline because it deleted whole chunks that it didn't translate properly when they did it. So I do recommend the fan translated version for PC. If you can get it up and running, it's beautiful and very well translated. They did an amazing job. So this is Krista Snow Pigeon. She is actually the Queen of Diamonds, and she took the place of Vivaldi, the Queen of Hearts, in the Diamond games. Wonderful Wonder World and Wonderful Mirror World. Sydney Black. Jericho. Bermuda, who is actually the dodo bird. He's based on that. Boris Ere. Nightmare Golshak. Grey Ringmark. Ace. Julius Monray. The Joker. Peter White. He does have one scene in there. I won't ruin it for you, but yeah, he has one scene. He has like a cameo appearance. And then we have Alice Little, Blood Dupree, Elliot March, Tweedledee, and Tweedledum. They're grown-up versions, so when they turn their clocks forward, this is what they look like. And they do that starting with the Clover game. And they go back and forth. They like to play at being children when it's convenient, and then adults when they want to have, like, extra privileges. And as you can see, everything came in really good condition. I'm still really impressed by that. The only one I had an issue with was the last game. But the game disc worked. They just didn't give me the box art and the manual, so I was really, really unimpressed with that. I have since learned my lesson on buying shipments from international sellers, and I always make sure that they have reviews now. So just forewarning, like, make sure that you're careful. I put my own box art because I had an extra manga with colored pages that I got. They sent me the wrong shipment, and so I took that and made my own box art. It's actually Blood and Alice from the manga tie-ins. I believe this was actually the Joker's series. Alice in the Country of Jokers, the Circus and Liars game manga. It was like the 4th book that I had an extra one of. And that was the last game before their bankruptcy. They were in the middle of actually translating manga, so we didn't get everything. I believe they stopped in the middle of the White Rabbit series, and they also stopped before translating Black Lizard, and I believe Bitter Taste was the name of it. So we didn't quite get everything. However, they are available as scanlations. Because again, the rights were lost. Like, these things are all bot used, basically, now. As for the tie-ins, I wanted to go over first the stuff that didn't make it to the US at all. Like, it's not translated, and I'm using apps to do this. They're beautiful. They're called light novels, and they have pictures in them, and they are basically short novels, still pretty decent length, that go over routes and other things that could have happened in the game. This is actually from the first game. It's Boris Airey's novel, and it's the Wind of Midnight. I'm actually about 30 pages in. I've been too busy playing other stuff. And it gives you, like, on the back, the same stuff that's in the manuals, only more. Like, bigger quality. Oversized! And you can tell, like, seriously, the art difference between the later games and the first games. Now, fun fact, the new game in 2020 will have the same artists and the same story writers. So there's not going to be any discrepancy, and they'll know exactly what they're doing when they're doing it. I'm really excited. Like, this is why I went crazy and bought everything, because I wanted it. And I wanted to translate it, and I wanted to play it, and I wanted to share it, so hopefully we can get some localizations going on. This is actually from the Clover game. It was a tie-in book for that, a light novel, and it's Elliot's. The March Hares. And it's a little orange kiss. This one I have not started reading, but I did translate, like, the preface. You can see that there are images in these. They have really gorgeous, like, one-page manga drawings. There's Elliot and Alice. I'll actually be doing vlogs of the summaries of these books when I finish them. I don't know exactly when that will be, but this gives you an idea of what to look forward to on the channel. This is actually the Bloody Twins' book. It's called My Honey Children, and it looks like it's from the Jokers, because they always put the logo for which game it was on here. And you can tell that it's the country of the Joker. This was the country of Clover. Same with this, country of Clover. And then this is from the country of Hearts, the first game. Here's the picture from My Honey Children. It has their adult versions. So them as adults. Again, the old art style. Because they had enough time to release 7 games and then redo 2 of the games as Shinsoban versions before going bankrupt in 2015. Oversized JP version of all of the characters for that game. Hee hee hee. We have, let's see here, how many roll holders versus the normal 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Yep, 14 total. When there's normally 12. And there are just 12 in all of the other games besides the Joker. Let's see. Trying to find you a picture. There we go. Here's one. Them laying. They're trying to, like, crowd in on Alice. And she's probably like, get out. Alright. Next, we are going to look at the actual manga. So for the deluxe and limited edition versions that I bought, you actually end up with a art book, as well as a light novel, short stories for the characters in Alice. And these are basically manga tie-ins for each of the games. Gives you like little explanations for plot holes. This one was the second to last game, Wonderful Wonderworld, Dia no Kuni no Alice. This one was for the Shinsoban version of the first game, so the new edition. Absolutely gorgeous, reasonably priced. I just adore this series. And I actually sat there and I translated all 3 books using my applications. It's understandable. It's not maybe word for word translated, but it is still pretty decent, as long as you're not just sticking with one, because sometimes one will stick out gobbledygook, and then you might need to switch to a different one. So that's my recommendation if you start doing this. Make sure you have a couple different apps you can try in case one starts messing up. And then this is from the Twin World game, the parallel version of the first game, which they actually grow up in here, but they're not the twins. So they get replaced by the mad eggs that bring the storm and try to make Alice into basically a kind of role holder, which the other role holders stop because they want her to remain an outsider and bring them meaning to their life and their game. So this one kind of doesn't tie into the lore, but it does explain some back-end stuff on how she ends up in Clover. And I thought it was really interesting to see like different variations of them, because the storm changes their personality and they don't remember what happens afterwards, and they go back to the way that they were. But supposedly it's like an annual event, even though they don't have hours and days. Because day changes on a dime. It can be night, and then suddenly it can be like evening, the next time change. He's the only one that can officially change times without a reason. Since he's the clockmaker, he governs time and like the bearer between the different dimensions and world. He bends a lot of rules too, just like Boris Ere. But he is still a manager of Wonderland, and he remains quite distant from the other role holders, the other territories, and even Alice in certain routes, other than his own. Because you can play him and like end up on his route. He actually plays kind of a side villain in this because he keeps stopping Alice from becoming a role holder, basically, an emperor for the eggs. And Humpty D and Humpty Dum are the ones that are replacing the Bloody Twins, D and Dum. And here, there's Blood, one of his tie-ins. And then you have the light novel stuff. They tell you which route it is when you go. So, like, if I were to scan this, it would tell me whose story it is, for whose route. And they give you an idea of what actually replaced the twins. So this is them in their real form when they're trying to get Alice to become the emperor of the eggs and, like, take over the storm. And he actually gains a bunny form, a full one, in the Twin World game, which he does not have in any other game, but the White Rabbit does. So it's interesting that the March Hare gains an actual rabbit form in here during the storm as his personality change, and the White Rabbit just has one continuously through all of the games. Here's the characters. So the original characters were Alice Blood, Elliot, March Hare, the White Rabbit, Peter White, Ace, the Knight of Hearts, Mary Gowland, basically the Duchess, Duke in this game, the twins, the two boys, Dee and Dum, and then Vivaldi, and then you have Boris Aire, Cheshire Cat, and then Julius Monray and Nightmare. Those are the art books that I got, the deluxe and limited edition booklets. Now for the actual manga, we have for the Heart series, which would be the first game. We had Elliot March's 2 volumes. I was debating doing audio reads, so reading aloud for people the manga at a later date in time. If it's requested, I'm not sure. May or may not. But I've read them all because I love them. And so he got 2 books in the first game. Julius Monray got 2 books in the first game. These are not connected together. This is technically supposed to take place like during the game as a spin-off way that she gets with Julius, the clockmaker's story. This is actually supposed to take place if she stayed, but still like on the premise that it's the territory of hearts. And they're like kind of like refusing to acknowledge that they like each other. So Nightmare gives them kind of a send-off along with Ace. So this is a little bit of a different version of how they would have gotten together for the first game. Like directly after the first game would have ended. If she hadn't gotten with anyone at all. And stayed off of the routes. And then we had 2 for Blood. These are tied together. And it was a really emotional story. I really, really liked it.